We now have a quorum and can begin the meeting of the State Board of Elections. It is about 1:10 p.m. and we do have a quorum of all 4 members. We have 1 vacancy. And are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, we're moving to item number 3, approval of minutes. My memory serves me, we have open meeting minutes for 2 different meetings and closed meeting minutes for 1 meeting to approve. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the open meetings for 8:1 and 8:15 and the closed meetings from 8:15?
Mr. Chairman?
Question? Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, on the 8/15/22 meeting minutes, under the section for proposed COMAR section 33.11.04.04, it lists me as moving the motion and seconding it. I assume it did not happen that way.
That is correct. Can we go back and see who did that and make that correction based on the video, retained video?
Yes, we can do that.
Great. Very good catch. Is there anything else? Anybody else see any other exceptions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Would it be appropriate to take a motion to approve the 8/1/22 open and the 8/15/22 closed minutes, and then we'll do a separate motion for the 8:15 minutes that would include the correction that you noted. So can I have a motion for the open meeting of August 1st and the closed meeting minutes of August 15th to approve as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand. So those pass unanimously. Now maybe a separate motion for the open meeting minutes for 8/15/22 with the correction of who, by looking at the video, who brought the motion and who seconded the motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. You pass it unanimously. Thank you very much. We move on to the administrator's report.
All right, good afternoon. I'm going to turn it over to Melissa for the first, and then I'll come back.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to take a minute and introduce a new, well, not a new staff member, a staff member in a new position. Marianne Magavro has taken the position of Director of Election Reform and Management. She joined SBE about a year ago in the same department, focusing on all things election judge, and has a ton of experience at an LBE before that. So I'll give her just a second to introduce herself.
Thank you, Melissa. Again, my name is Marianne Magavro. My last name is often messed up. It's fine. No worries, Marianne. I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to continue to serve the election community in the state of Maryland.
Great. Welcome and thank you. Congratulations on the new role.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa and Marianne. So you have the administrator's report in front of you. We will do as we have been, our practice is just to highlight those things that we want to bring to your attention. So I will start with just a few things. So tomorrow we were invited to a Ways and Means briefing to answer some specific questions that they would like us to answer about permanent absentee voting, consolidated polling places, and the use of the ballot marking devices. And sorry, the fourth is the timing of the return of mail ballot. So we're working on that now, and we'll attend tomorrow's briefing. And I believe at least one local board will also be participating. And then just want to highlight that likely by Friday, we will be issuing a written report on the 2022 primary election. We started doing this in the 2020 election, and it seemed to be well received. So we are in the final editing stages of that report, and we will share it with you. It will be posted on the press room, but we will share with you a copy. And then with that, I'll turn it, we'll turn to the 2022 general election preparation. And I will turn it over to the team to see what items that they would like to highlight. So Mary Ann, anything under the election judges sections that you'd like to highlight?
So the election judge recruitment is really gotten a tremendous boost from Power the Polls. We had over 15,000 applicants on a list they have given us statewide. We continue to work with nonprofit organizations to get as many applicants to the local boards as possible. As far as training, did you also want me to speak to training, Nikki, as far as the online refresher?
Sure, just highlighting what you think should be called out verbally.
Sure. So we just launched our online refresher. That is a online tool where the local boards can continue their training. It will assist them to get that done. It should be especially useful for those that have a tough time getting their judges in to get them trained. So that would be predominantly for those judges that serve during the primary. Melissa, is there anything else you can think of that I should include?
Nope, you covered it. Thanks, Marianne.
Thank you.
Anybody from the board have any questions for anything presented so far? I had one question as it pertains to our online ballot deliveries. And so this is kind of in between kind of where, Nikki, where you started and where we just went. For the primary, I'm wondering if we have any data. I've always been concerned about how many online ballot deliveries we have, and because of the added processing time, because they all have to be duplicated. And I'm just wondering if our request percentages are going up or down, and where they are, and then is the rejection percentages, are they higher for online ballots than regular versus regular ballots? And I'm wondering if we could maybe shoot something out on that, or have something for next meeting, just so we can see a comparison to see if there's something that's actionable in that area.
Sure, we can pull that together for you.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions? Who is next up? And again, thank you, Nikki, for reminding us that we're highlighting the report as we go through. I like to always say that, and thank you for helping me there. I appreciate it. Can always use help. Who's up next?
I believe I have the Assistant Attorney General's report.
Oh, I think Dan, we're
No,
the administrator's report.
yeah.
So just quickly on voter education, we kicked off the campaign this week. So you might be seeing things in your social media feeds or Google search. And then it's just been a whole lot of activity about mail-in voting. So Jen, do you want to highlight any of our work on mail-in ballots?
Thank you, Nikki. Hi, all. This is Jen McLaughlin. I'm very excited that the actual mail-in ballots that we're delivering to voters by USPS will start going out later this week, and people will see them in their mailbox next week. And as Nikki has noted in the notes, that Dropbox will be in place by then, and all of the locals are ready to start picking them up. So I'm looking forward to getting mine as well. That's all.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? I guess we move to candidacy and campaign finance division.
Just to highlight the deadline for writing candidates is October 20th, 2022, and they do not need to file in person. Just some stats from the campaign finance report, the pre-general one, which was due on August 30th. 85% filed timely, and we have 92% now in for the required report, and the rest are being fined daily. The maximum penalty is $1,000. The next big report is the pre-primary, the pre-general 2, which is due October 28th. So I'll give you all that. And then on the we're beginning the audit on the audit for the public finance gubernatorial candidate is ongoing, and basically on the county programs, Montgomery, 6 of 20 candidates received the maximum public contribution for the primary election. And in Howard, all 5 certified candidates were nominated by their political party and will be candidates in the general election. So that was their first attempt, their first iteration in the program, was quite successful and moving forward with it. And just enforcement actions and website activity on both on MD and on the business contribution disclosure system.
Great. And I know we'll be talking about enforcement and waivers yet later in the agenda.
Exactly, yes.
Any questions for Jared?
Jared,
Seeing none,
Mr. Chairman.
yes. Sure.
Yeah, Jared, I do, it's just generally a question. So on the pre-general 1 reports due on August 30th, 85% of the committees filed on time. Why are they late? I mean, I realize it's a big question, but I mean, are these committees that are new to this process? Or are these just too busy? Or why is it that 15% of the committees can't get it in on time, particularly in an election year?
So it's probably A, B, and also C too, which is, this is also the one after the primary election. So a lot of people that lost in the primary then forget that they think, oh, I lost in the primary, I don't have to report anymore. And they still have to close out. So that's why we send out notices, the fee running notices almost a week after the report is due, so that they get it and go, oh, that's why the jump went to like 92% immediately there. Overall, we always, that last 8% is just one of the things that we never get. We send them notices, we send them bills, we send them notice to show cause letters. That's why we refer matters to the state prosecutor for collection as well. So I think that that 15%, that issue was just due to they forget, and all of the above for those reasons. But we do try to tell them, and they have all the notices beforehand, and we send them email reminders as well as postcards to them beforehand. Just like this report that's due on October 28th. Right now, it's in this system. So if they log in, they can see it automatically there as a reminder on their reminder screen. The next report due is on this date. We then send them emails probably a week before. We start sending them like almost daily kind of reminders saying like, hey, what's going on, and making sure that they remember it. And we send out postcards 10 to 20 days before the report is due, so that they'll be getting that.
I thank you. That was a very thorough response, and also really appreciate the efforts that you and your team are putting out there so that folks who need to be filing timely certainly have notice to do it. So thanks. I appreciate the explanation.
Thank you.
I have one additional question. Is that remaining 8%, is that typical? Is that year to year? Is it about 7-8% of those
Yes,
that
pretty much.
do not respond?
Yeah. For a report, that's pretty much average, that we go to the state prosecutor's office. And then once it goes to the state prosecutor, then you see a little bit more of an uptick. But basically at that point there, we're sending the matters, and they're seeking, judgments on affidavits, and we go to court, and we send some of the violators over to the central collections unit for collection against them as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Voting systems, I believe, is next.
So I'll just refer you to the information that's in the report with a brief update on the electronic poll book project, and then turn it over to Keith for his update.
All right. Good afternoon. And you have before you my report. If there's any questions, I do want to highlight on the Baltimore City relocation, which has been on this report for a while now. And it's not that we have not been doing anything. There's been a lot of activity working with the Baltimore City Board of Elections, at the same time that they're busy trying to get ready for the election. But in my assistance with them, I've been trying to reach out to subject matter experts on different areas. And in the last few weeks, I've been working or talking with individuals in the prefabrication area, Baltimore City, and Maryland in general. And I'm looking to reach out to some other subject matter experts that can assist in, moving this whole effort so that we can see if before the 2024 election, there's a possibility for the relocation, or if we have to wait until after. But it appears that there's some viable solutions out there. It's just getting in touch with the right people to, validate or eliminate those options. So that's what I'd just like to share. Thank you.
Any questions for the project management office?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Keith, and thanks for the extra update. I know I raised it before because I noticed the Baltimore City relocation project being on the agenda multiple times and was curious now. I'm still curious about it generally, so I appreciate the update. Do you know what is driving the relocation? Was it like the existing facilities becoming obsolete, or is there any impending urgency? Because it seems to me that there should be urgency if we need to get it done before 2024. But that might inform, the steps or the level of escalation that might need to be undertaken here.
Yes, and thank you for the question. There are several challenges that the Baltimore City Board of Elections are facing. One, they currently are in two different locations. One down near downtown Baltimore, the other, the warehouse is in another facility. And there's been a desire for them to merge and come together. But more importantly, it's the age and the structure and there's many issues in both the office and the warehouse that need to be addressed. Wiring and just different things that patchwork have had to be applied over the last couple of years. So if we don't do anything before the 2024 election, there's still going to be a need and cost to make for the 2024 election, the places usable, to the degree that they need to in order to be in there. So those are two of the reasons for driving, them doing this relocation. If that answers your question, sir.
It does, thank you. And then the other question was, I guess, and you drafted it, you see yourself as in support role. It's the city board that is in the driver's seat. Is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that by the structure, they're the ones who need to do it and you're just helping as you can and providing guidance on the best practice to do?
Exactly, providing them the support, from a project management standpoint and, anywhere that, I can contribute.
Okay. So it seems like, and I guess maybe you don't even know if they've identified potential, a short list of relocation sites, or I guess maybe where the bottleneck is.
Well, over the last few months, we've identified a number of locations, existing buildings, and there's still one possibility. But for various reasons, we had to eliminate, either because of the size, the location, there's so many dynamics that are associated with it. But as we're looking into the prefabrication aspect of it, one of the big issues is finding the land. Before you get into really being able to develop it from a prefab standpoint, you have to have a civil engineer come in and take a look at, some of the things which you would have to do with a conventional building, but with a prefab, there are other considerations, those things that we're learning and having to address, which would add to the timeline.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, and maybe we can talk offline. Maybe I'd like to be helpful if I can in the effort. It seems like there is better for worse land available in vacant areas of Baltimore City. So hopefully that's a solvable problem.
Absolutely, and I look forward to them talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you. And Justin, I love that idea. It's awesome. Thank you. Any other questions for the project management office? Move on to information security.
Thank you. So you see in the administrator's report, just an update on information security. Everything that we've been doing, we are keeping doing. Nothing is being lessened. It's all being strengthened as we move into the election. So we are in constant contact with our federal, state, and local partners and sharing information, and doing assessments on our systems to make sure that they are as tight and secure as they can be. So I would refer you to the administrator's report. If you have specific questions about systems, we can see whether we can answer them in open session or need to do them in closed session. But all things are go, and we are staying on top of everything that we see and responding appropriately with our team at SB, as well as all of our vendors that are supporting us.
Great. Any questions around information security from the board? Okay, seeing none. Are there any questions in general that someone has not brought up yet on the administrator's report? Seeing none, we will move on to the Assistant Attorney General's report.
Good afternoon, members of the board. You probably, again, all have the Assistant Attorney General's report in front of you, so I will review it summarily. If you have any questions, obviously, please pose those. In order, you'll see on the September 28th report, there are currently 8 cases pending, although 2 are going to drop off the list after this month. We'll go in order of the list. The first is obviously the emergency petition filed in the Montgomery County Circuit Court to allow early canvassing of mail-in ballots. That was granted by the trial court it was granted from the bench on Friday, September 23rd. The opinion and order issued on Monday. Delegate Cox has intervened in the matter and appealed the circuit court judgment. So right now the appeal is in the Court of Special Appeals. And yesterday the Court of Special Appeals ordered the state board to reply to the delegate's motion for a stay of the circuit court judgment. Delegate Cox is asking the Court of Special Appeals to essentially halt the circuit court judgment while the appeal is pending. The Attorney General's office will be replying to that motion on behalf of the state board before the Court of Special Appeals imposed deadline, which is tomorrow at 3 p.m. We're hoping to have a decision soon in that case. The second and third cases were both petition challenges that took place right after the last meeting of the board. Field and Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition were both challenges to local board determinations that there were insufficient signatures for petitions. In Field, it was to place a candidate on the ballot for the 4th Councilmanic District in Montgomery County. For Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition, it was to place a question on the ballot. In both matters, the local boards prevailed and the circuit courts ruled that the local boards were correct in disqualifying the challenge signatures and that therefore there were insufficient signatures to take the action that the petitioners sought. The 4th and 5th cases on the list are both federal cases. The 4th case, Gibson, is a civil suit against a number of state entities, including the state board, in which it's alleged that the entities engaged in a RICO violation to commit election fraud. The state board, or the Office of the Attorney General on behalf of the state board, filed a motion to dismiss about 10 days ago. It was about a week and a half ago. And subsequently a number of counties as well have joined the motion to dismiss and filed motions to dismiss for their own reasons. There has been no reply from the plaintiffs to the motions to dismiss yet, so the case is still pending in the Federal District Court in Maryland. Number 5, Johnson is an allegation by a primary candidate for the circuit court bench in Montgomery County that the law that prevents him from being a write-in candidate in the general election is unconstitutional. And he seeks injunctive relief to allow him to be a write-in candidate in the general election. The Office of the Attorney General filed a motion opposing his request for injunctive relief. He has since replied to that motion fairly recently. The court has not scheduled a hearing yet, and so the matter still remains pending before the Federal District Court. 6, 7, and 8 are all matters that were on last month's report. 6 was the Keegan Iyer v. DeCola case, in which 2 candidates for a councilmanic member or a councilmanic seat in Frederick County, one challenged the residency of the other. That case was decided before the last meeting on August 12th, but we were waiting to see if there was going to be an appeal. There has not. The time for an appeal has passed, and that case is now finally concluded and will come off the list at next month's hearing. In the Win-Red matter, we were waiting to see when the 8th Circuit scheduled oral arguments. Oral arguments have been scheduled for October 18th, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. And in the Baltimore County branch of the NAACP case, the court essentially has concluded the case and disposed of all the substantive matters. The only question left is attorney's fees. However, there's a legal question surrounding the award of attorney's fees that another 4th Circuit case is going to decide. So the Federal District Court has stayed the decision on awarding attorney's fees until 30 days after the 4th Circuit issues its opinion on the matter. That could be at any time. I'm likely going to take this case off of the list because the attorney's fees issue is not necessarily an election law issue that the board needs to hear about at every meeting until the 4th Circuit renders its decision.
Thank you very much. Anybody on the board, any members of the board have any questions throughout or any matter around the Assistant Attorney General's report?
Mr. Chairman.
I do. Yeah,
Mr.
sure,
Chairman.
yes.
I have a question regarding the petition for emergency remedy, but I would prefer to raise it in closed session because I'm seeking attorney opinion. And I think the discussions would be privileged among us. So.
Thank you. Yeah, and we do have, we have that scheduled for the end of the meeting to do a closed session around 2 matters, one of which being would fall under attorney-client privilege. So thank you very much. Are there any non-privileged questions to ask the Assistant Attorney General here in the open meeting? Okay, seeing none, we now move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is for the board to consider suspending COMAR 33.11.04.03 subset 1 for the 2022 general election. Who on the staff will be presenting that?
I can't unless Dan wants to. Oh, based on that look, I'm doing it. In light of the court's decision on Friday, the regulation that's listed in the agenda 33.11.04.03A1, that section says that the local boards start counting ballots on the Thursday after Election Day at 10 a.m. It's the verb start that's the problem, right? Because some of them under the court order might have already started. And so our request is that that provision be suspended for this election and that the board direct the local boards to count on Thursday starting at 10, but it may not be their first canvass. Is that right, Dan? Did I get that right? Okay.
Okay. Are there questions around how that was stated? I think I can put that back in the request for a motion, but I want to see, is there any questions or surrounding that ask right there? So that would be based on the court decision that we have a motion to suspend COMAR 33.11.04.03, I guess that's A1, for the 2022 general election. And in that, attached to that, the board would direct the LBEs to begin counting, or how did you word that again? I don't want to mess that
That
up.
they would just count on the
That they would
Thursday
count
after the election.
Thursday at 10 a.m. because they may have already begun counting before that.
Right. It's to preserve that Thursday count.
I do have a question. In the unlikely event that the appeal was successful, would we want this back in place?
You do not need it in place. If the appeal is successful, then 11302 of the election law article would mandate that a count could not begin until the Wednesday after the election. And by suspending this provision and providing the directive that any count on Thursday starts at 10 a.m., you're providing the same uniformity guidance that the provision would provide anyway.
Thank you very much for that clarification. That makes sense. Are there any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
So,
first
Chair,
question,
yes.
do we need to make a specific finding that the, like, as if it were a normal regulation change, like this is an emergency action, and like, what is the necessitating factor for this move?
Yes, it would not help. So one distinction we should make to make sure the board understands this, you're not writing an emergency regulation, you're not creating any or promulgating any new regulations. You're taking an existing regulation and choosing to suspend it, which you have the power to do because it's your regulation, but a finding for why you're choosing to suspend it would be appropriate.
Which would be the court action of counting early. Does that make sense, Justin?
Yeah.
So then, is there a motion to suspend COMAR 33.11.04.03 subsection A1 for the 2022 general election and direct the boards to count Thursday at 10 a.m., knowing that they may have already counted? Again, count.
So moved.
Been moved. Is
Second.
there a second? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Passes unanimously. So we move on to the approval of the ballot marking device number increase LBE requests. And I believe that to be clear here, this request is for ballot marking devices that are already in possession yet not deployed based upon needing board approval. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
How would you like to do? You have a number of them, I think, right?
yes, we have them for several counties that were sent around before the meeting. We have Caroline, Baltimore City, and Montgomery, I believe. And the threshold, just for your information, is for election day, anyone using or wanting more than 3 ballot marking devices at a particular location needs to get board approval. And for early voting, it's more than 6. So in each request, some of them are pretty lengthy. The local board has set out how many they need or are requesting. Just one point of clarification, while the Caroline County letter lists locations where they are requesting 3, those are not up for board approval. They have just requested those from SBE to be sent from the warehouse, but there are 4 locations that need additional B&Ds for a total of 4.
Okay, and is that clear somewhere?
No, that's why I just clarified that.
So let's start with Caroline
Sure.
County then. What is the exact ask of the motion to be for Caroline County?
They would like one additional ballot marking device deployed to their 4 largest polling locations.
And this is on election day or
Yeah.
early voting? For election day?
Correct.
So, anybody have any questions about the Caroline County request to have one additional each at the 4 largest polling locations on election day?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
In reviewing are we on Caroline County? Okay.
Yes.
I'm looking at Caroline County. I'm looking at this letter. Caroline County, based upon the letter, deploy 2 additional 4 each location. Okay, so why is there a request for additional? What's the basis for that?
We should have Allison on the line. I don't want to make any assumptions on her part. So Allison or David, do you have Allison on?
No, not right now.
And before, well, another more general question, maybe before someone else can weigh in is, do we know, or can you clarify where, like what provision, or is there a bylaw that specifies the current regime that you can only have between 3 and 6 BMDs, a location that written down somewhere, or do we or do our predecessors decide that?
I would have to, Donna, I believe that it was decided prior to this, that was the threshold.
I think it might be in the NFB settlement. We
I
can
was gonna say.
take a look. I think it's in the NFB settlement that if it's more than a certain number, that the state board has to approve it.
That's what I recall as well, is that it was part of the NFB settlement that over a certain amount, the state board would need to approve it.
Allison's on the line, by the way.
Allison?
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm sorry. I had rewound the meeting, so I missed a little bit of what you were discussing.
So Allison, the question from one of the board members is just the reasoning why you need the extra 4, I think it is, on your 4 largest locations on election day, just a reason why for that board member.
Okay. So we noticed that about half of the voters at the polling places have been marking their ballots using the electronic ballot marking device. So after the election was over, we sent a survey out to our election judges at each polling place to identify areas that could be improved upon. And it was an overwhelming response that we needed additional ballot marking devices because of the demand. So that's why we decided to send 1 additional ballot marking device to the 4 largest polling.
And you have those in your inventory to deploy, is that correct?
We do. We did end up getting some spares from SBE just to have spares on hand.
Sky, did that answer your question?
It answers the question, but I'm still, are there costs associated with, I mean, I'm hearing that you have some available, but is there cost, or I guess I'm still trying to get to get some sort of assurances here as to, I guess our approval is required. Someone is saying that approval is required by virtue of the NFB lawsuit. Is that our public position? It's because NFB requires state board approval for these additional BMDs to go to particular LBEs. Is that correct?
If my memory serves me, the settlement on the lawsuit with NFB, there was a certain amount, there was a window of amount of BMDs that could be deployed in early voting and then on election day. And if they wanted more, they could achieve a certain number more with board approval. And if I remember correctly, the spirit of that was that due to cost issues, the board may want to limit that based on what's in inventory. That's kind of one of the reasons I was pointing out what was in our inventory, that there was not additional state dollars or county dollars being spent in buying additional BMDs to that end.
Okay, thank you. If we were to approve for Caroline County, the 4 additional BMDs, will there be any expense related to that number?
Melissa
Sorry,
or Nikki?
Allison, my understanding is that there is no additional expense. These are all units that you already have. It's just a matter of taking them from the warehouse and putting them in the polling place.
That's correct. We are not purchasing additional units.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all I have for Caroline County. Thanks.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Caroline County?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And that's the question for you, I guess, well, not just you, Allison, but since you're the first LBE before us. And I think I would support granting the request, given that they're already in supply. But do you know or can you discuss the procedure for checking in? Is it for voters to have the option to use the BMD versus paper ballot? Like, is it presented in such a way it's like, what would you like to do? Or is it that there's like direction from the welcoming election judge to say, you can go this way or that way, or you should go there?
Mhm.
I
So
believe
we follow.
if I just, I don't mean to cut you off, Allison, at all, but I believe that actually also the verbiage was approved in the settlement with NFB. Nikki, am I correct with that?
I don't know if the exact verbiage is in there, but the board had previously approved the language that is in the judge's manual and all their instructions. I don't know that the specific language is in the agreement, but that had been a prior board decision.
Well, in other words, I don't think Caroline County has movement in that. Here was the
Yeah, that's fair. It's probably not a question for Allison, but I guess it's more a question for maybe ourselves and the staff to consider and think about. I guess my preference in thinking through election security would be to have the more paper ballot, have plenty of votes by BMDs to make sure that there's the secret ballot is preserved for those who require a ballot marking device, but the preference would be probably for more paper ballots for security and for the speed of the process. So I guess that's something to look at maybe going forward. So yeah, maybe I'll withdraw the question, but I guess
Well, we do follow the state's procedures, and our judges are trained to say the statement as approved by the State Board of Elections. But we have seen an increased usage with the ballot marking device, and I don't know if it's because of the change of where it is now said, because it used to previously be stated at the check-in. Now it's stated at the ballot issue judge's station, and so I don't know if that has increased the usage, but we have seen a higher demand.
Any other questions for Caroline County? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion allowing for one ballot marking device at each of 4 locations that are the largest polling places for Caroline County.
So moved.
Or second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. It's
Thank
always
you.
hardest to be first. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for that. Okay, so now we can move to, which one would you like to handle next?
Either is, I think Baltimore City is next in your information.
Okay.
And those are all election day polling places. And they have requested one additional ballot marking device to each of the listed locations.
What is the total, how many that is? Do you?
I believe, so it brings them up to 4 total for each one, and I think there's 11 of them.
So it's 11 additional locations receiving 1 extra unit. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do they have them in inventory?
They do. Excuse me.
So are there any other board questions about the Baltimore City request for additional BMDs? Seeing no questions, Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
I'm
Yes, sure.
sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Caroline County was able to answer the question beyond just that there's, that the state board. So there are 2 questions that we posed to Caroline County. One was, why is this coming before the State Board of Elections? I think we've determined that any additional request for additional BMDs requires State Board of Election approval. There's the second question, which Caroline County certainly answered to my satisfaction, which is why? Why do they need? Why are they asking? Can we get the same? Can we post the same question to Baltimore City? And Montgomery County should go ahead and get ready to answer that question as well.
Sure. Do we have a representative from Baltimore City online?
Not this time.
Is there somebody from Montgomery County online where we could maybe turn these around and maybe we can get a hold of somebody from Baltimore City? Anybody know? Is there somebody from Montgomery County representative?
David, do you see anyone?
Okay.
I believe, so Baltimore City did set forth in their letter that they have consolidations in those precincts.
Ah. So it says, I'm going to read from that letter. I went, and pardon me for this because I went straight into the sites, but they're seeking additional BMDs to polling places that have been consolidated. So whereas they would have had the same amount of voters, I believe, like the first one is 3 different precincts are now being consolidated into one. So they would have had a total of much greater. So they're seeking 1 more in a consolidation of 3. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
So it would actually be potentially almost a net loss of BMDs across them, but it would give them an extra one to handle the consolidation. Am I saying that correctly? Does that, Sky, does that make sense to you, or would you rather hear from somebody from Baltimore City? You need to unmute.
Sorry, I was looking at the document. No, that's fine. I mean, consolidation, I mean, yeah, that's fine. And I've jumped ahead to Montgomery County's. reviewing that one. Okay, no, I'm fine with Baltimore City. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Are there any other questions about the Baltimore City request? Seeing none, the Chair would entertain a motion to allow the 11 additional BMDs to the consolidated sites Baltimore City, has listed in their September 7 correspondence. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. All right, that passes unanimously. I have not reviewed the Montgomery County one yet. Is it either Melissa or do we know the reasons why here?
Yeah, they list them in their introductory paragraph. In the past, the board has sent a higher number of ballot marking devices to these sites due to the number of registered voters in that precinct and/or higher population of elderly voters. In addition, we have increased the number of ballot marking devices where we have seen greater demand. And you will have to forgive me, I will need a couple minutes to do the math if you would like the total number of BMDs requested.
Well, my question, as always, would be start with, this is BMDs that are already, the addition would already be in their inventory?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just note for the record that they have essentially two categories of requests. They have early voting sites and they also have individual voting sites for election day. So it's not quite the same as the other two. The delta for the early voting sites is greater numbers per site than for the individual polling places. But just for the record, that's what the document shows.
Thank you. I believe that early voting sites have a higher number allowed in the first place. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to quibble too much, but the representation made in the letter, the reference to in the past, the board has sent a higher number of ballot marking devices to these sites due to the number of registered voters at that precinct and or a higher population of elderly voters. I just think that referring back to previous need is not compelling, but not dispositive from my perspective. But I do think that a reference to how it's happened in the past, especially if we were dealing with something where this is going to cost extra money, et cetera, I would expect real-time representations about that they do have an increased number of registered voters at a precinct, or they do in fact expect a higher population of elderly voters. So just present tense data would be appreciated rather than reference to past practices.
Is that something that you believe you'd like to see now, or are you, based on this not being an added expense, are you prepared to consider it today?
I'm prepared to consider it today if we're not talking about additional expense. And again, additional expense is not the end all be all to the analysis, but I think that when we're being asked at the state level to make these approvals, simply relying upon past practices, it's information and it can be helpful context, but it doesn't, if challenged, it doesn't necessarily reflect present day need. And it might be nothing more than they need to rephrase how they present it to us. But as presented, I'm considering past not present, but it's not going to cause, it doesn't seem as if this is going to cause a financial, this is not going to be a financial issue, a budget issue. So I won't hold this. I would not hold this up personally. I would not hold this one up.
Okay. Any other board members have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I would say that
Yes.
I found the backup to be a little thin on all these. This is not a procedure that I think people have gone through in the past at this level. So perhaps there was no expectation of what they should put in their papers. But I think that if you combined all three of these and had that level of detail from each one in one consolidated document for each county, something like that would be very helpful to us, giving us actual numbers. How many people are in a large precinct? How many elderly or other voters who require BNDs are there in a particular location? That kind of information would be very helpful to us. This appears to be essentially cost-free. It doesn't seem outrageous, but having a little more backup for our decision would make me even more comfortable.
Okay. Are you prepared to be able to consider this today?
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So would someone like to make a motion to accept the additional BNDs as per the correspondence from Montgomery County Board of Elections dated September 26th, having to do with both early voting and election day locations as presented?
So moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. That's passed unanimously. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your time. Melissa, and I obviously you've heard from several board members that would like to see if there are additional ones, maybe a little bit more detail and reasoning, and maybe if they could make sure they make themselves available on the meeting day in case there were questions.
Sure thing.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks for
you.
your work on this. So now we're moving to the approval of waiver requests.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. In front of you is waiver requests for Title 13 waivers, which are political committees. There are 58 waiver requests for your approval. I have also included the denials in there, which the board doesn't have any action on, but just for your edification. So I present for your approval the 58 requests as recommended with the recommendations. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer any specific one, but for time purposes, presenting all 58 in one package to you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board about either the requests for to approval and or the ones that the office has denied? Seeing no questions, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the waiver of the 58 late filing fee waivers as presented today at the meeting.
So moved.
Or a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Unanimously approved. I think you still have the Title 14s to do?
Yes, we have 3 for the board there, 3 requests that are for granting and 1 rejection.
Board have any questions about the Title 14 request for waiver?
I do, Mr. Chairman, I do have a question.
Yes.
I am looking at the memo and the underlying documents that Jared has provided. I am specifically curious about the Radiant Innovative Inc. And if I just want to make sure I'm not sure that I entirely understand what is being requested by Radiant Innovative, and more specifically, the number of late reports, the amount of fees, the total of $4,120 in total fees, prior waivers, late fees and outstanding. So yeah, if you could fill us in on this one, Jared, because I'm looking at this going, I don't like what I see here.
Yes, so when we tracked it down, it was Radiant Innovative it has a state contract over $200,000. For some odd reason, the boilerplate language was not in the RFP about Title 14 requirements there. So when they were notified about it in, I would say, early June of 22, they had filed the report. Once we got in there and that the contract was established by 20, we made sure that, the committee was supposed to, the entity was supposed to file all the missing reports from 2020 forward, which is why they're all outstanding and why there's late fees associated with it. They have now subsequently filed those reports, which is why there's $4,000 extra in the penalties, because we made sure that they had to file those missing reports because technically they had to. But for some odd reason, the boilerplate language was not in that RFP, which was why we recommended granting this waiver. So that they were supposed to have notice of that at the time, and it didn't occur until later. When we were looking into why it wasn't it in the TORF or the RFP.
You're muted again, Sky.
Sorry about that. So the RFP would have been issued by which part of the state government? Do you know, Jared?
Yes, by us. It was a State Board of Elections contract.
It was a State Board of Elections contract. Okay.
Yes.
And so it was not in that document at the time of the RFP. Okay. And when this was raised by Radiant Innovative, who went back and looked at the RFP to confirm that it wasn't in there?
That was our procurement officer,
Okay. And who is that?
Whitney Faust.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it.
Any other questions from the board about the Title 14 waiver request? Seeing none, there are three of them. Is there a motion to grant the three Title 14 waiver requests as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. I believe that concludes the waiver requests. Okay, we move on to old business. Isn't there any old business to deal with today? Seeing none, we move to new business. Is there any new business on the agenda that I don't know about? Okay, we move to the disclosure of campaign contributions.
I have a disclosure, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I donated $250 and attended an event for gubernatorial candidate Wes Moore.
Okay. Any others to disclose? Okay, seeing none, we move on to the scheduling of our next meeting. Let's see. That would normally be on Thursday, the 27th of October. Does that day work for everyone?
It's not ideal for me. I have appointments, both internal and external, that I would have to move. that day.
How about Wednesday, the 26th?
I have a tentative meeting scheduled that day from noon until 4:30. That one is less, I can move, I can work around that one. It's more on the 26 I could do, if others can.
Does the 26th work for everyone? Would we want to consider again a 1 o'clock start on the 26th to try to finish that work for the staff and for everyone else on the board? Try to make sure we finish timely.
1:30 would be better for me. I have a standing meeting at 11:30 that sometimes bleeds into 1 o'clock on Wednesdays.
Okay. I mean, I'm not against 2 o'clock if everybody would prefer 2. I'm just trying to throw that out there. I don't know if we're considering having a lot of business that day or not, so. Is there any preference from the staff as far as start time on the 26th? And is Wednesday the 26th acceptable to the staff?
Yeah, I think the 26th is actually better. The 27th is the first day of early voting, so.
Okay,
it'd be
so if
better.
we do it on the 26th, was 2 o'clock okay then? I don't know, starting at a half hour difference, I'm not sure really grants us anything. Is 2 o'clock start okay for everyone? Okay. So our meeting is set for October 26th at 2 p.m. So now I believe that concludes the open business for the board. I am going to talk about moving into closed session, and I want to say that we will not be coming back into the open session just to close the meeting. So at the end of our closed session, that will also close our open meeting. There is no further business to do after the closed session, so that we will not be coming back into session. So the board will now consider whether to meet in closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice and obtain information from staff about pending or potential litigation as permitted by Section 3-305, subsection B, 7, and 8 of the General Provisions article. Meeting in closed session will allow the board members of the board to seek and obtain legal advice with board counsel without waiver of the attorney-client privilege and obtain information from staff about pending or potential litigation. Number 2, we will discuss compensation of employees over whom the board has salary setting authority as permitted under Section 3-305, subsection B, 1 of the General Provisions article. This exemption allows a discussion among the members of the board regarding a personnel matter that affects a specific individual. Meeting in closed session would allow the members of the board to be briefed on personnel matters and share their views without compromising the confidentiality of those discussions. May I have a motion to meet in closed session?
So moved.
Or a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And that is the motion having passed. The board will meet in closed session in accordance with exemption B, 1, 7, and 8 of Section 3-305 of the Open Meetings Act. Again, we will not be coming back into the open session. This concludes our business for the day in open session. And may I make the recommendation that we meet at 2, I show it as 2:19. Can we say 6 minutes and we meet at 2:25? Is that fair? Okay, everyone, that sounds good. See the board in 6 minutes, and thank you everyone else for tuning in.